All right. Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Conversations with Rob. Please like and subscribe our videos. And obviously, if you're listening to the videos here online on YouTube, I'm sure you're listening to our 10 radio stations throughout the nation. Today, we have a special guest, Jessica Grace. And I know we're in the 2020 era right now with Big Bernie Sanders kicking butt in New Hampshire. And now he is off to Nevada. And then after that, we're off to South Carolina and Super Tuesday. So I have Jessica Grace. She is a volunteer organizer in Reno, Nevada, and she's also a precinct captain for Senator Bernie Sanders. So Jessica, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the program here.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, so Jessica, first of all, let's tell the viewers a little bit about you. What got you into politics and specifically supporting Senator Sanders?
Well, I actually became involved in Occupy in Oakland in 2011. I had just moved from the East Coast to the Bay Area, and folks were occupying Zuccotti Park in Manhattan, and I really liked the messages that were coming out of that movement. And so when Oakland started to become active, I went downtown and checked it out, and it turned out that there were a lot of other groups, local groups, that were active within the Occupy movement. And basically since then, I have become involved with local initiatives and groups. And then when Bernie ran in 2016, I was involved in his campaign in Oakland, and I ran to be a delegate from Alameda County, and I went to the state convention, and I went to the national convention with the California delegation, yeah, that's how I became involved, and it's just been one step after another, and now I'm living in Reno, Nevada, and I wanted to be involved with the caucus, and so I'm volunteering for Bernie's campaign, basically organizing the other volunteers. So when people call to canvass in the Reno area, when we have buses of people coming in from other states, if they come to Reno, they're greeted by me. And I answer any questions that they have, and we give them some training, and we send them out knocking doors. So I've been doing that for about 2 months, and on caucus day, I'll be a precinct captain. So I'll be organizing the caucus from the Bernie campaign in my precinct.
Okay. All right, so I didn't know you were originally from California. I want to get into a little bit about that, and then we'll move back to Nevada since I just found that out. So let's talk about 2016 in California, since you said you ran as a delegate. There was some fishy stuff going on in California in 2016. I heard a lot of reports. We're broadcasting from Florida right now, but I heard a lot of input in about California, a lot of vote tampering. There was people that were NPAs that weren't able to vote. They got provisional ballots. A lot of those ballots were thrown away and weren't counted. I personally believe Bernie Sanders won the Democratic primary in the state of California. We also saw the Associated Press came out the night before the primary and announced that Hillary Clinton was the winner of the nomination before even the votes were counted or even cast in California. What was your take on what happened in California and being involved in that process rather so much? Can you tell the viewers a little bit of what happened with all that voting irregularities down there, please?
Yeah, so I can tell you about my own experience. And I kind of went into supporting Bernie in 2016 with a lot of faith in the institutions like the DNC and the Democratic Party and the state party. I thought that we were in for an uphill battle, but I thought that people would have some sort of professionalism and civility. And I was really surprised at the way that the Sanders campaign participants were treated. We just weren't prepared for the type of like street fight that it became. And so in California, they have a really complicated process for voting. And I was a registered Democrat in Oakland. And because I was involved with the campaign and I ran to be a delegate, I made sure that I was registered multiple times. And so my experience in California, I had lived in California for many years. And I was registered as a Democrat multiple times, but multiple times I was removed from the voter rolls.
Wow.
And so when I started to get involved with the Sanders campaign, way before the primary even happened, I checked my registration again and I had to re-register. There's a deadline. It's different this year because California used to vote much later than March 3rd. And so there's a deadline for registration, and in California, you can register to be a Democrat, a Republican, a non-party preference, and then there are all these other smaller parties, and they're all listed on a card when you register. And one way that a lot of people get tripped up is there's a party that's called the American Independence Party, I think, or the American Independent Party. And that's actually a neo-Nazi right-wing party, but a lot of independents think it's they're declaring themselves independent. And so basically it's difficult to register correctly. And once you register, you could get thrown off the voter rolls. That being said, when we went to the primary, if you are registered as NPP, non-party preference, no party preference, you are able to vote in the Democratic Party, but they give you something called a provisional ballot. And in the primary, there were tens of thousands of provisional ballots that were never counted. And so from the perspective, from my perspective in Alameda County, what happened was the AP announced the day before that Hillary won, which was an outrage. We were angry. We were on Twitter about it. And nothing was done. It was just kind of, I mean, the whole primary was counting Hillary's super delegates before the convention. And so, I mean, it was all this kind of crazy farce. After the voting happened in Alameda County, Bernie was down like 8.5 points or something like that. And so it was sort of declared that Hillary Clinton routed Bernie Sanders. But what actually happened after all the press left was that they counted the ballots, the ones that they didn't throw out anyway. And so over the next 6 weeks, Bernie just steadily gained a foothold against Hillary. And I think one of the problems with the state convention that in 2016 was that the number of delegates in every county were counted according to the vote. But the vote actually wasn't counted until and certified until after the state convention. And so there were just a couple days before we were supposed to go down to Long Beach for the state convention, and we didn't know how many people from Alameda County were going for Hillary and how many were going for Bernie, because the vote totals were changing the entire time. And so we were angry about that, and it turned out that in my district, Bernie ended up winning. But it was after the state convention. It was like, I think 10 days before the national convention that the vote final was certified. And it was a disappointment, to say the least.
So last question on California. I'm sure you have quite a few friends that still live there. Maybe they're involved with the campaign. Do you have any information from them? Are they worried about the same things happening again? Obviously, that's a little bit after Nevada on March 3rd, as you stated. Do they have any issues that they think will happen again as far as the vote counting goes in California?
It's the same issues with the registrations and the partisan ballot, the provisional ballots. Alex Padilla is the
Secretary.
party, the state party chair. He's still in that position, and yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of friends there. I will say that this year, the ground game for Bernie is just like off the charts. It's like having the DSA and Sunrise Movement and so many like teachers unions and the national nurses. Last time in 2016, the national nurses were awesome. They were showing up to Bernie events in a big red bus and getting out in scrubs and dancing, coordinated dances for Bernie. Like, it was amazing. We also had a billboard for Bernie in downtown Oakland, but this year it's like not just the national nurses. It's like they have a 4-room, 2-story phone banking in the East Bay DSA, like happening every day for Bernie. And there's been some videos online of them, and they're making thousands and thousands of calls. And so we're hoping that despite the fact that California still has all of these tricky ways of like not actually just counting the votes from the people, that we can overcome that with a really strong showing, and just like using the ground game this year. It's incredible, and to be a part of it is amazing.
It's so funny, Jessica, that we see the Republicans stealing the vote. We see all this voter ID stuff on the Republican end in Republican states. But on the Democratic end, they're doing the same thing with the shenanigans that are happening in California. We saw the Iowa caucus silliness going on. And that's what I want to talk now about Nevada. So you're in Nevada. So since you're in, before we talk about the caucus in general, since you're involved with a lot of people coming in buses, we saw this in New Hampshire and Iowa too. People coming from all over the country, and some people coming from all over the world to canvass for Bernie Sanders to hopefully, because he is the hope for the United States, to get him elected so we can have a better country, but not also that, but also a better world. What are you seeing as far as people coming from state to Nevada right now with the caucus coming up next? Is it big turnouts? Is it from certain states? What are the people you're seeing?
So we're seeing a lot of people. I mean, this weekend, for instance, like I'm in Reno, right? I'm not in Clark County down in Vegas. And so Vegas has a lot more focus on it. But in Reno, we have 3 buses coming from Boise, Sacramento. Last weekend we had a bus from Oakland, and they were amazing. Like Bay Area people are just like pounding the pavement for Bernie, like all over the West Coast, and they really get the job done. And so this weekend, yeah, we have probably about 500 people coming in from out of state, and then we have our sort of local operations, which is about the same number. Bernie has a number of field offices in Reno, and so it's not just the Reno office, and he has, I believe he has three or 4 Reno offices, and then we opened an office in Sparks as well, which is a smaller city to the east of Reno. And so there's definitely a ground presence here. I read yesterday that Bernie has 100 paid staff in Nevada, which is higher than any other campaign. And I also read that Chuck Rocha has registered over 100,000 Latinos 2016 till now in the state of Nevada, which is amazing because the turnout in 2016 for Nevada for the entire caucus was about 80,000 people. And so Bernie is trying to double the participation in the caucus. And so hopefully if we can get 150,000 people out, we have some things that are really, that have been changed, rules have been changed in between 2016 and 2020 in order to hopefully avoid some of the chaos that happened at the state convention last time. And this time we're doing early voting, which is starting tomorrow morning for 4 days. And we're hoping that we can capture a lot of working people with families that maybe can't spend Saturday afternoon in a high school gym caucusing with us, but they can go into any polling location in their county and they fill out a ranked choice paper ballot, which has some issues with it, but we're hoping that that brings up the vote. And also this year, felons can vote. If you have a felony on your record, you can vote in Nevada. Nevada has same-day registration and no voter ID, so you don't have to show an ID. And so you can just walk into a polling place and vote. And so we're hoping that those changes help to bring up the numbers in participation of the caucus.
So we saw the Iowa debacle. Can you explain to everybody what is a caucus and how does it work? Because I mean, I'm in Florida. Like I said, we just do the regular voting as you would do in the November elections this year. So a lot of people don't know what a caucus is. To me, it seems very undemocratic because they're going to these places. I do understand how it was in the old days where, you could meet a lot of people, you talk about what's going on in politics. But if my boss is there and they see I'm voting for Bernie Sanders and I'm in a right to work state, I'm just saying in general in Florida, they're not going to be too happy to see me vote for Bernie Sanders. Maybe I have a family member that's Republican. They see that I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. So doesn't that kind of make it a little undemocratic and scary because, people that you work with or work for, they might hate Bernie Sanders and they might try to retaliate against you. But can you tell the viewers about what a caucus is and how it works?
Sure. So a caucus is different from state to state. So Iowa runs their caucus a little bit different than Nevada. And honestly, there are a lot of intricacies to the way a caucus works. And so I don't know all the differences between all the different states, but I do know how it's supposed to work in Nevada. And so in Nevada this year, we are introducing early voting, which is a first time. And a lot of people just question how that can even work with the caucus. But I can tell you how it's going to work here, or how it's supposed to work. So early voting is 4 days. People go in, it's just like a primary. They fill out a scannable paper ballot that has, and you put in your ranked choice for your candidates. And I think there are 5 choices. So you can put all of your favorites down, or you can say uncommitted. And so some people, they don't want their vote to go to another candidate, and so they'll put uncommitted. Those votes, and the early voting in general is supposed to be a way to get around that sort of public voting that you referred to. And it's true, there are lots of situations where people don't want to stand across the room from their cousin or their father or their employer. In the case of Nevada, like, I'm sure it wouldn't be too difficult to imagine that there are a lot of union workers that want to vote for Bernie Sanders, but maybe the leadership of that union is not so keen on that choice. And so early voting is anonymous, and it allows you to vote your conscience without fear of intimidation or judgment. And so we're hoping that the early voting is a really plus for Bernie in Nevada. So people file their early votes. Those votes are supposed to be counted by the Nevada Democratic Party, and they're scannable like a Scantron if you've ever taken a test in college.
Right.
And then they're sent to a secure location and locked up. And those numbers are supposed to be distributed to the home precinct of the voter for caucus day. And on caucus day, we can get in, like we should get into the way, the verifiable tabulation of all of that in a bit. But on caucus day, those numbers are supposed to be presented to each campaign as in the first alignment. And so when you walk into caucus, you sign your name and you go in and there are different groups of people in different areas of the room representing the campaigns, and you go to your corner with your first choice candidate. And based on the number of people that participate in early voting and that show up at the caucus, there is a minimum number for a candidate to be viable. And so it might be that you go into the caucus and there's 200 people there and there's 40 early votes from your precinct, and the viability number is 22. And so that means that in maybe there's not 22 Warren voters, maybe there's not 22 Mayor Pete voters. In that case, those voters and for those candidates would have to choose another candidate or leave the caucus. And so that's when the realignment happens. So there's first alignment, viability threshold has to be met. Then there is a final alignment, and then there's a final count. And then those numbers are verified across all the campaigns, and they equate to a certain percentage of delegates. And so every precinct has a certain number of state delegate equivalents. We saw this in Iowa with SDEs. These are not the pledge delegates that go to the national convention. They're delegates that go to the county and the state convention in Nevada. I'm not sure if Iowa does county and state, but Nevada does county and state. So in Reno, we would go to the county, Washoe County convention, and then we would go to the Nevada State Convention. And basically what the delegates do is they go to this convention, and there are sessions where you meet and you talk about what the state county party will support. And so you'll have people that are promoting Green New Deal or Medicare for all, and then there's a vote, the delegates vote, and they say whether the party will endorse certain policy positions. And so a popular one in the Democratic Party is that all candidates in the Democratic Party should be pro-choice. And so that's very common to see on a lot of state party tickets and in the national party platform. And so that's kind of how it works. In each of the precincts in Nevada, there is a number of state delegate equivalents. They range anywhere from 1 to 6. In my precinct, there's 4, but I'm in a pretty urban area.
Okay.
And so the delegates are distributed according to the population density of the area. And then once everybody votes, you saw probably from Iowa that the numbers aren't rounded numbers. They're like 2.2653, 2.7 whatever. And so that's when there's like this whole discussion of rounding. And so what happens is if you do the delegate math correctly, in my precinct, I have 4 delegates. And so it might be such that you do this for all the viable candidates and you've only given out 3 delegates or you've given out 5 delegates. In that case, you have to take a delegate away or add a delegate. And the way that you're supposed to do that in Nevada is based on the candidate that has the highest decimal point remainder. And so if a candidate has 2.87 and another candidate has 2.76, the extra delegate goes to the candidate that has 2.87. In Iowa, there's coin flipping. I have not heard of that ever being required in Nevada. I could be wrong. I'm just a volunteer organizer. And so, but that's how it's supposed to work. And there are some worrisome aspects of the proposed process in Nevada, and so I have been trying to give some visibility into those aspects of the caucus to regular people. There's a lot of people that are really they don't trust the reporting because of what happened in Iowa, and in Nevada, the NV Dems, the Democratic Party, they're not communicating. They're not answering questions from journalists, and there's just some strange secrecy or not transparency happening. And so you have volunteers from the campaigns that are worried, but also volunteers that are supposed to run the caucus from the Democratic Party that are worried. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. That was like a crazy mouthful, but like,
no, thank you. No, thanks, Jessica. It was really informative, and I'm sure the listeners wanted to know what the heck goes on in caucuses. So thank you for that. You just spoke about the Nevada Democratic Party being very secretive. We saw this with the Iowa Democratic Party, found out that a lot of the workers there were not trained on the app. The app was supposed to also be for the Nevada Democratic Party to use in this caucus. Now, they went away from that app because of the debacle in Iowa. My question is, now, from what I've heard, first of all, we saw that Pete Buttigieg had one of his senior staffers. She just left his campaign and joined the Nevada Democratic Voter Protection. I don't know if you heard about this.
Yeah.
But she just signed the Nevada Democratic Voter Protection, whatever the agency or whatever it is that they have. Okay, so that's already suspicious. Now you're telling us that the Nevada Democratic Party's not talking to reporters or journalists about what goes on. And now there's this new app with it's an iPad Google tool for them. Yeah. Do you know anything about this app? And is the Sanders campaign know about this app? Are they worried about this app? Because it seems like it's just the same thing reoccurring 2 weeks later.
Yeah, so I can tell you about those reports that you just mentioned and the responses that the Democratic Party has given. Okay. The Nevada Democratic Party paid some $40,000 to the shadow corporation or whatever startup, I don't know what you want to call it, organization, super PAC, dark money fund, I don't know. Right. Anyway, they paid a lot of money for the app, and as soon as Iowa happened the way that it did, Nevada stepped back from using the app. In that time, which you mentioned has only been a couple of weeks, Nevada first said they weren't going to use the app. Then they said they were going to use paper ballots. Then they said they were going to use an iPad app. Then they said it wasn't an app, it was a tool, and now they're calling that a calculator. And so the way that it is supposed to work is on caucus day, each of the precincts have the campaign representatives to run the precinct from the perspective of the campaign. And the Nevada Dems have people as well. The state party has people as well. And they're sort of like the MC of the caucus, right? Like they come out and they say, okay, we're going to start counting now. Okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they kind of move the event along. And at the end, they are supposed to post the numbers for all the campaign representatives to see, take photos of, verify, and those people are the people with the iPad and the iPad tool. And so there's trainings that are happening all around the state on behalf of each of the campaigns. So I've gone to the Bernie Sanders campaign, caucus day, volunteer trainings. And I have all of the materials and instruction from the Sanders campaign. There were a number of people that are involved with the NV Dems, the state Democratic Party. They volunteered to basically MC these events. And so they are supposed to go to their precinct and they are supposed to receive an iPad that already has the tool installed on it. And this iPad is supposedly not able to connect to the internet, and it is supposed to have the early vote numbers on there. And there is a tabulation that happens in the app. And so the questions that the volunteers for the Democratic Party have is that this tool, the iPads, they've never been live tested. In the last training, the volunteers went and saw slides. And what they have said is that the slides looked like it could be an Excel spreadsheet. But they never used this tool or this app. And so there are questions about how it's supposed to work, or whether it will work. And so there's just not a lot of certainty there. And it's unfortunate because a lot of the problems in Iowa, there were people that were not comfortable using smartphone apps that were supposed to manage all of this data and communicate it to the state party. And I saw reports that some people just didn't want to do it that way, and so they didn't. They didn't want to use the app at all, and so they didn't. And so that's not really, we're not sure what's going to happen with that. And we're also not sure how the early vote numbers are going to be tabulated and verified. They're just supposed to show up on these iPads in each precinct, and there's no way for any of the campaigns to know whether those numbers are accurate or not. The counting from the early votes, I'm not sure if there's been any information at all released as to whether there will be representatives from the campaigns that are there. We've just been told that the numbers will show up on these iPads, and whatever the NV Dems tell us in the Sanders campaign, what our starting number is, that's what our starting number is. And so that's a little not, I don't trust
suspect. That. Yeah, it's really suspect. And I agree with you. It's scary because it seems like the same situation as, I mean, I just stated this, but it seems like the same situation playing itself in a different way in Nevada than what had happened in Iowa. I hope it's not. I hope that they get the right person, but it's real shaky when you hire the Pete Buttigieg person, and then you don't have reporters, and then people don't know how the votes are tabulated. It's disgraceful that we're supposed to be a party that cares about all people, but how do we even know if their votes even count? It's disgraceful. But
I do have some, there have been a couple of statements and developments regarding some of those details that you just mentioned. Okay. So the Nevada Democratic Party says that Emily Goldman, the Pete Buttigieg staffer that was hired to do voter protection security or whatever, What they have said is that her role is not applicable until the general, that it
Right.
has nothing to do with the primary, and she has no vote counting authority and will not even interact with the primary. That's their statement. They have said that they will not release the name of the company that's developing the app for security reasons, because if they tell people the name of the company, then they're going to get hacked. They have said that they're working with Google, and I think I don't like federal agencies. I don't want to say like the NSA or Homeland Security. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I saw
But
that too.
they
Right.
said that they were working, and they were vigorously testing the app for security reasons, but they can't tell the public who's making the app. And then also this morning there was a report out that the DNC was heavily involved with the development and rollout of the Iowa app. And
Great.
the Nevada state officials have said in previous days that the DNC is here, like working with them to create this app and make sure that Iowa doesn't happen. But I think I'm not sure if they're just like completely tone deaf, or you know, like they don't communicate well with each other. But I'm not sure that telling the public that the DNC is involved with the development of another app is what is going to give anybody more confidence
Right.
in the process. And so, I mean, if you look in the media, you have outlets like I read an article from CNN this morning that had a bunch of quotes from DNC people and Nevada Democratic Party. Didn't have any quotes from any volunteers or any of the campaigns. And they said, we're working our butt off to make sure that this is really secure and it's going to work. Period. The end. No, we won't answer any questions, but it's going to work. Trust us. Literally, trust us. And so I'm a little worried about it, and the only thing that I can do as a precinct captain is know the rules of the caucus in my precinct and document everything, and listen to what the Sanders campaign tells us to do. I do have a lot of trust and faith in the Sanders campaign. They have really great people working here. They're really smart. They communicate well. Our technology has worked. We will use tabulation sheets, paper, but also we will communicate to the campaign digitally in apps that we've all used already. And they're not specific apps for the caucus or whatever. They're just communication devices that we're going to give the first alignment vote numbers to the final alignment and the delegate counts and the final delegate, whatever is certified. And so that's really all I can do, which is what I keep telling myself. Like I can't run the election, you know, like I can't,
Right.
there's no amount, like I can't raise a flag. I'm just a regular person. I'm just a volunteer.
Yeah.
And so all I can do is take photos and videos, and make sure I do the best for Bernie, and hope that people higher up than me know a lot more than me.
Right. Well, thank you for doing what you're doing, Jessica. Just about 2 or 3 more questions, and I appreciate the time. We saw what was going on in Nevada. I know it's not in Reno. It's more in Las Vegas with the union, the Culinary Union 226 workers. How important is it for Bernie to get those voters? And we know Bernie does extremely well with union people and union households in general. But the misinformation passed out for Medicare for All is probably, it's going to hurt him a little bit because some people are not informed 100% on the issues. They do read a lot of stuff. But we saw that the union is not going to endorse any candidates. So that, I guess, is a positive. But what is your take on that?
Yeah, so the Culinary Union was active in 2016, and some of the same figures that are around in California are also around in Nevada, and so we kind of knew that there was some political differences of opinion there, and the Sanders campaign has been working really hard in Nevada to do outreach in communities of color and working class people across the board. Bernie he's endorsed by 29 different unions. He is the workers' candidate, and so there was a series of tweets that were released by the Culinary Union, and they distributed a document that was basically like a table that was judging each of the candidates on the impact that their different policy decisions would have. And they told their workers that Bernie's Medicare for All would end their health care that they've fought for. And the health care that they have is pretty good, and they have fought for it. But what this table document failed to mention is that Medicare for All strengthens unions. Anybody that has ever been in a union negotiation knows that you spend a lot of that time negotiating with bosses for that health care. If Medicare for All is passed, that is no longer a bargaining chip that any union bosses will have. You can now bargain for better wages, better benefits, but everybody will receive health care. Bernie also has a provision in his Medicare for All plan that redistributes any savings from Medicare for All back to the union members in the form of wage increases. This was left out. This is a major thing because a lot of people feel like they fought really hard and they made sacrifices for this care that they and their families receive. And so they should know that the care that they would receive under Medicare for All is the same, if not better. It also makes their bargaining position stronger, and they would have the savings redistributed to them in the form of wage increases, which is important for people who are working class. These are not people that are making $500,000 a year. And so wage increases is a game changer, you know? And so when the tweets came out from the Culinary Union, there were a number of people that wanted to correct the information. And so I was one of them, and I was just letting people know about that redistribution of savings. And a lot of people don't know that. Medicare for All is a complex topic. It's got a lot of intricacies. I mean, we could spend a whole podcast talking about that, like we just did the caucus. And so we're trying to get the word out and let people know. And there are lots of figures that are receiving bribes and kickbacks and payouts from insurance industry people to give out false information. And so, you know, in the Sanders campaign, you have a lot of regular people like me. I don't have a big, huge platform. I'm a regular person. But, you know, I am not part of a union, but my mother was part of a union. And I didn't grow up in California. I grew up in a working class family in Rhode Island.
That's where I'm from originally.
Yeah, I could tell from the accent. And so I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Yeah, I grew up in Providence. And
Johnston.
Yeah, so my mom was part of a union, and you know, she had the same trouble in her union. There were lots of things that the lawyers and the bosses sided with the, in her case, she was a public employee of the town. And so the bosses would side with the town and the mayor. And she said that she paid her dues, but they were never there for her when she needed them. And so what happened yesterday with the Culinary Union is we had a lot of Sanders people online like me that were just trying to like put out this information about Medicare for all and how it would really work. And it's an uphill battle because, you know, the bosses were giving out this false information. Yes, the other candidates all had responses to that were like, you can't attack a union. And so we tried to make it as clear as possible that Bernie stands with the working class of this country, and it is not attacking a union or any public official or any pundit that's giving out false information. What happened was yesterday, the workers released their own petition, and so many people had signed that petition in support of Bernie Sanders that the union retracted its endorsement of who we think was Joe Biden. We think they were going to endorse Joe Biden, but so many thousands of workers that were actually union members signed this petition in support of Bernie Sanders that they've just retracted the endorsement entirely, which is kind of a win for us, but also it's just, you know, another day in the Sanders campaign where we have like a group of powerful insiders saying absurd things.
Right. No, I 100% agree. And Rhode Island is one of the most corrupt Democratic states. So I 100% know what your mom went through. And I know the story about the public employee unions who really got screwed under our governor right now, Gina Raimondo. But
Who endorsed Bloomberg, by the way.
Yeah, endorsed Bloomberg, correct. 100%. Yeah, no. So we could get into that for another podcast too, but we'll move on. Last two questions, and thanks so much for your time, Jessica. I appreciate it. I want to ask, what are you seeing on the ground? Are you seeing a lot of Sanders support? I mean, we've talked about, you know, a lot of with the minority community, Hispanics, Blacks, Native Americans. He's really popular. Or are you seeing a lot of undecideds on the ground when you hear volunteers and people that you're working with talk about?
Well, I can give you some sort of qualitative observations.
Sure.
I was at the Women's March with the Students for Bernie, which are amazing in Northern Nevada. The Students for Bernie up at the UNR campus are amazing. They've gotten thousands of students involved. The campus up there is pretty large. It's about 40,000 people. And so they've done a really great job. And I was with them for the Women's March. And there were, you know, different groups of people for the different candidates there. And we somehow ended up with the next to the Pete people. And we had signs that said "Hot Girls for Bernie," and they were yelling "Eat the Rich." And the Pete people had like matching T-shirts on and giant Pete heads. And so I mean, different vibes, like entirely. But there were, you know, I would say maybe a couple dozen to 30 people for Pete there. And so there is a Pete presence. I know that Bernie texted me this morning saying that he's spending a ton of money on
Super PACs,
ads in Nevada. And so I think there's a Pete presence. I haven't seen so much of a Warren presence, but I have been told by people who have lived in Northern Nevada for a long time that Clark County and Las Vegas is very diverse. There's a big Latino population here, but up in Northern Nevada, it's a little bit whiter, and it's more like college educated white people. There's a good Native population here, so we're hoping to get them to come out and caucus for Bernie. But what my friends have told me is that Warren should have a somewhat of a showing here in Northern Nevada. It probably will be along with her polling, but I've seen a couple of Warren people here. There is a plaid Tom Steyer bus. Like the tie he wears on all the debates. It's like a red plaid bus. And Tom Steyer has been advertising heavily in Nevada. And so I think this is the first state that he really thinks that he can move the needle in. And so I think he's polling right now third with like 11% of the vote, last I saw this morning. And Biden, I know that it has been reported that he's putting money into Nevada and taking money out of South Carolina and putting money here, but it really feels like too little too late. There's not a lot of people that are excited about Biden. I haven't heard anybody talk about him. I haven't seen any Biden signs or billboards or anything like that. And so, you know, we'll see what happens. Bernie is ahead right now, I think by 7 points. And voting starts tomorrow morning. So I mean, the results in Iowa and New Hampshire were surprising and didn't go along with polling. And so I don't put it past anything could happen.
I agree 100%. Lastly, so you believe Bernie's biggest competition is Pete then in Nevada? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, I don't know. I think the polls say that Biden has support here.
Yeah.
I think the polls are Bernie, Biden, Tom Steyer, Liz Warren, and then Pete. Pete has about 8% in the polls. But I don't know. I mean, Amy Klobuchar is also here, and all of them are like, move to me, I'm the moderate. I have no idea. I try not to, like, the Sanders campaign is just like, it doesn't matter what the polls say, like, knock doors. And so we have had a goal to knock 500,000 doors in Nevada before caucus day. We're somewhere up in the high 300,000s or something. And so I've really just been focused on literally getting those doors knocked and having people call, and just doing the best to have an unprecedented ground game, because it's the only way that Bernie is going to overcome all the other crap that we talked about for the last hour. Is having those like one-on-one conversations. They really do make a difference. In Nevada, I can tell you that we talk to people all the time that do not know that there is early voting. They don't know anything about the caucus. It's like they don't know what is going on at all. We have had some people that say Bernie Sanders is running again. And so it's really just about like getting information out there, and whoever can get the most people on the ground really has a lot to gain in Nevada, because the population of Nevada, you know, is much higher than the participation in the caucus. So if any one of these communities becomes particularly inspired and involved, it really could move a lot for any of the candidates. But you know, we just have our nose to the grindstone and we're like, knock the doors. Like, I don't care. Culinary Union, knock the doors. Joe Biden, knock the doors. Plaid Boss, knock the doors. Like, it doesn't matter.
Right. So lastly, Jessica, can you tell all the people here your Twitter your Twitter name, I guess, so people can follow you more?
Yeah, my handle, I'm Jessica Grace. My handle is Isika Lynn. It's ISICALYNN. I will be live tweeting from the caucus as much as possible. You know, my first priority is to assure fair reporting. But a big part of that for me is being transparent about the process with as many people who will listen.
All right. Jessica, thanks so much. And it's nice to meet a fellow Rhode Islander. And I hope you come on again after the caucus so we can talk more about what happened and hopefully a big Bernie victory.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Rhode Island, we out here.
That's right. Thanks so much, Jessica. I'm definitely going to have you on again. I appreciate all the time. And, you know, it's been almost an hour. So thanks so much.
Well, yeah, have a good day. And if anybody is listening to this right now still, you know, make calls for Bernie Sanders. Come to Nevada on a Bernie journey. We could use you. Come knock some doors. If not here, please consider doing it in your state, especially Florida.
I agree. It's going to be a tough one down here. There's a lot of Biden and Bloomberg down here, unfortunately, but it is what it is. So, but we'll figure it out. Thanks so much, Jessica. I'll keep in touch. I appreciate you again.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too. Bye now.